Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and today I am delighted to be joined all the way from Budapest by Kevin McCluskey. We welcome Celtic supporters from all over the globe, Kevin, and contributors as well. Celtic versus Kilmarnock, the team which has beaten us twice this season, both away from home. How do you think we will fare today? We are going to be sticking to that attacking shape that we saw against St Mirren last week, Kev.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy to see that, to be fair. Now, I'll be honest with everyone. I did miss the game last weekend because I was away at something. But I've seen the highlights, so I might not have caught it all live, but I've seen the highlights. And I know that only gives you like a snippet, a section of the game. But from what I saw of that, that change in formation seemed to make a bit of a difference. Not a massive difference, but we scored a couple of goals. We'd done it earlier on in games. We didn't have to rely on penalties last weekend for it. So there's definite signs of encouragement from that change. So I'm looking forward to seeing how it plays out today in a full game. I reckon we've got a really good chance again today, to be fair. Kilmarnock give us difficult games at Rugby Park, and I think it's largely down to that surface. It's never an easy venue to go to, as we've discovered. But at home, we seem to have a pretty decent record against them. We won 3-1 earlier on in the season. We played some pretty decent football in that game. I know we had Hatate in the midfield, and he's a miss. But let's start the show on a positive note at least, and then take it from there. I think we've got a pretty decent chance again of getting the result today. And if we do, it puts that wee bit extra pressure on that other lot going into their game tomorrow afternoon. And quite frankly, that's what we should be aiming to do right now. That's the number one focus, I think, for us.
Absolutely. I think there's been a lot made of almost, Celtic throwing away an unassailable lead at the top. And part of that narrative, Kev, is to say, look how great Rangers are. Look how great they've been doing. And I think it was quite interesting yesterday, Brendan Rodgers saying that, he's been at clubs who have been obviously involved in derbies elsewhere with previous clubs. And it's okay for the narrative to be that both clubs are doing well. But up here in Glasgow, if one's doing well, the other one can't be doing well. Celtic are sitting top of the league and not joint top, because if the league was to stop right now, Celtic would win it. Just to point that out, because that seems to have been missed as well. And I think also there's massive games to play that if you're going to win this league, you've got to step up and show that you are capable of doing it. One of them, I guess, is when you're given the opportunity, Kev, to go top of the league. And it's all about a mentality then, isn't it? Can you do it? We talk about momentum swings. We keep hearing about momentum swings, right? Well, if you can do it, you've not done it yet. Or when you come up against Celtic, the champions, the reigning champions in the derby games, if you're going to do it, these are the games you've got to do it in. And they've not done it this season. Over two different managerial tenures as well. So I think that the Brendan Rodgers bullishness that we've seen returning to the fore in the last few weeks should continue between now and the end of the season, Kev. I think he's a much better beast when he feels maybe as if he's a wee bit on the back foot.
Yeah, he seems to have that sage mentality about him at times. And we have seen it when it comes to the big games. He generally comes out on top, right? And you mentioned there's been 2 Glasgow derbies so far this season, and we've won them both. We've won them both with makeshift defences that haven't had Cameron and Carter Vickers in them, and we've had to reshuffle during the game. We've, when it mattered, or when it has mattered so far domestically, we have come out with the results. And that's something that, Rangers haven't done. They haven't done it consistently for the last few seasons. So there's no point us kind of sitting here just now counting our chickens on that one. We've got to go out and win the games. But I think history has proven that we do have it in us to do it. And let's hope we can. There's also nothing wrong in us highlighting that over the past month or so, the performance level has dropped and it's been pretty turgid football and difficult to watch. But to counter that one as well, we've come through it. We've really only dropped points against Aberdeen, despite all that. We are now looking to be a wee bit more offensive-minded in the way we're playing. And maybe this is what Brendan has been trying to build us towards all season. He's now finally gotten Ida up front. Maybe doesn't trust O to be his a starting striker. But now he's got Ida. As soon as he's done that, he's in the team. Kyogo hasn't really dropped out. There is a change of shape that accommodates two forwards. Maybe we're beginning to see something of what Rodgers has been trying to build towards all season. And if we are, then you'd like to think the results will continue to follow. And yeah, we're the ones that are still to get knocked off that perch. And let's hope it doesn't happen.
No, you're right. And again, when you're talking about the way that I think we discussed this on the Celtic bulletins and the matchday bulletins, Acsom daily shows, Kev, instantly, because you might be picking up on certain things that aren't going so well, or certain performances that you think aren't at the level that they should be at, that can't be viewed as a fan base panicking. I mean, we've got concerns. I mean, even when, Ange Postecoglou, there's the klaxon, even when he was at the club, you watch some of the post-match games and you're critical. You're critical of the performance. You're critical of individual players. You're critical of the gaffer as well. These things, I think, get overly focused on, and it's almost as if, we're losing our minds here. No, it's not that at all. I think that, and I said this over the last couple of days, I just think Celtic fans, certainly on our comment section, they're not afraid to air their views, Kev. And if their views are that we're not playing that well, or an individual should be dropped, or the recruitment team should be reshuffled, or the head of recruitment shouldn't be at the club, you're not panicking. You're making, measured and balanced observations. Flip side of that is, just you wait for their sticky patch and we'll see who's panicking then, because we know how the reaction is when Rangers aren't doing well. We know how their fan base reacts. So, bring it on, is I guess my view on this. Now, obviously, going into every single game, we've all got a view on how we should line up, what's the predicted 11, will the shape change? I didn't think, Kev, that Brendan Rodgers would have stuck to the new shape. I'm going to call it the new shape, because we're pretty stringently stuck to the 4-3-3 all season. And then, obviously, last week against St Mirren, he changed that up. He found a way getting Kyogo and Ida in the same team. Kyogo, I thought, played with more of a freedom. He was able to, make the runs from deep, timed them perfectly, finding pockets of space, which he's brilliant at. And I think what we've seen from Ida, although he wasn't as involved in the game, was a player who's able to hold the ball up. For a big, tall guy, ball sticks to him. He's like Samaras in that respect. The ball sticks to him. Giakoumakis was brilliant at that as well. You could just loft the ball into space. You knew he was going to bring it down, hold on to it, use his strength, and then obviously someone would run into space. So he's looked at that. I would have liked him to do it today, but I'm surprised he has. I thought he was going to go back to the tried and tested.
Yeah, we've been speaking all season about system changes that he could make, and it gets to the point where, for me, I was always wanting to stop engaging in that conversation, because I thought he's never going to change. He's never moving away from 4-3-3. Seems to be stuck in that system. But it has been that arrival of Ida. I'll get his pronunciation right at some point. But it's been his arrival that's brought that change around. We'd seen earlier on in the season that Kyogo's best performances this season, outside of the two Glasgow derbies, have been in games where O's been up with him and he's dropped deep and he's been given a wee bit more freedom. So this is where I think maybe Rodgers doesn't trust O to be a starting striker, but he's now finally got someone in that he does, and it's allowing him to play Kyogo in a way that he feels he can get the most out of him. And I've been impressed by Ida in the couple of games I've seen him. Listen, anyone in a Celtic jersey that can score a penalty gets a big tick in my book, because we find that a difficult trait to find. And then, like you say, against St Mirren, from what I saw in the highlights, it was every ball that came to him, he was flicking it on, he was holding it up. I hadn't quite put the Samaras connection in there, but I love that one. Any conversation about Samaras, and I'm there. But he looked really good, and he was becoming a focal point of the attack already after just a couple of games. He's bringing players into the game. So long may that continue as well. Am I surprised that he's done it again in this game? A little bit. But as I say, maybe this is just what he's actually been gearing towards. He's wanting to play this 4-2-3-1, which I think he used predominantly at Leicester when he was there. So, maybe this is a slow evolution into the team that Brendan Rodgers actually wants us to become.
Yeah, I hope so, Kev. I really do. Now, Kev, Celtic follower rather. I thought Bernardo would get a start today, but nope. I did mention earlier Iwata. Suppose having O on the bench, we might as well play Kyogo and Ida together. It was pleasantly surprised, really, Celtic follower, when I seen the team and Kyogo and Ida were both in. I didn't think Brendan would have gone for that. I would have done. I definitely would have done. But if we were playing with the midfield three, Kev, I had suggested that it was time maybe to bring in Tomoki Iwata, who, bizarrely enough, I was looking at the minutes that he's actually played in the last 13 months since becoming a Celtic player. If you accumulate the minutes together, he's played 12 games of football. And I think that, that's shocking. That's really stark when you look at it. It's something like 1,083 minutes. And every time he's played, I don't think he's had a right good crack at it in his favoured position. When he got a run last season, he tended to get pushed into the centre back position because of the injuries, and Kobayashi wasn't up to the task. And then in the pre-season, he had to play right back, if you'll remember, when we were playing our pre-season games. Don't think he played particularly badly at right back. He even had a few overlaps and crosses. But I would like to see at some point Tomoki Iwata coming in as a defensive mid-Kev to give, I guess, McGregor and O'Reilly the freedom that, when they're playing with that freedom, I think McGregor's an 8. People will disagree with me all day long, say he's a 6. I'm going old school with the numbers, by the way. If you remember that a 3 was a left back. And when you read a team out, it would be Hart, Ralston, Taylor. You don't do that now. It's always Hart, Ralston, centre backs, Taylor. But anyway, and I think the 10 role would suit O'Reilly, in this team. But because we've obviously cut back on the midfield area, Kyogo's playing more like a 10, isn't he?
Yeah, he is in this system. When I saw your tweet earlier on with the team, and when I got down to saying Iwata, I just had a wee wry smile to myself and thought, Paul, that's never happening, mate. Never.
Ma Iwata is your Haksabanovic, mate. You take a liking to a certain player.
You're right. Yes, and you can't see anything against him. And I like Iwata, and I would have him in my team. But I just thought there's no way that he's going to be in Brendan's team because he's never kicked a ball from. Brendan's never given him the chance to kick a ball. He's the only midfielder that hasn't had a run in the team when we've been looking to replace Hatate throughout all his injuries. And I don't understand it. I think one thing that this team is crying out for is a number 6. McGregor worked as a number 6 under Ange because he was a deep lying playmaker rather than that traditional 6. In this system, we need a 6. We need someone that's a bit more physical, athletic, does the wee bit defensive dirty work, and then gives it to McGregor, an O'Reilly, or a Hatate to play. And Iwata's the one in the squad that fits the bill for me. Mm-hmm. So we either play him or we go and sign a 6 and replace him. At the moment, I've got so much sympathy for him because anytime he's come in and played, he's done brilliantly. I'll always talk back about that game against Rangers last season, the 3-2 game, when we virtually win the league. He shows up in the midfield and wins us the game. He's a really good player. I can't understand why he doesn't get a look in, but hey, I don't pick the team. But maybe one day he will. But yeah, the way that we've got it just now, and if we had a 6, you are feeding Callum McGregor up to dominate games again like he did last season. You are giving freedom to somebody to be in the 10, whether it's O'Reilly, who I think could do it, Hatate when he comes back, or Kyogo. I think it would just give us more balance. So, yeah, maybe one day, maybe in the summer, we'll get that 6 that we need.
I know, and when I mentioned it, when I mentioned it, Kev, a lot of the people came in saying, that he lacks the physicality. I don't think he does. I think that's one of his best assets, the strength.
I think that's an underrated asset in his game, actually, because he's one of the few that's over 6 foot tall, which I don't think he looks at first sight. But, apparently he is. He's definitely not scared of a physical battle and confrontation. He puts himself about. And as much as I love Callum McGregor, and he does get stuck in a bit, that's not his game. And it's if he has a weakness in his game, it's that. And that's Iwata's biggest strength.
Yeah, he's got the upper body strength, without a doubt. Paddy Lavery, afternoon to you as well. Look at that picture. That was last Friday night when we went over to Belfast. In the middle, you'll see John Hughes there. as well, Paddy. An absolute pleasure to see you again, pal. Taylor is back. James Cormack, you're right. Let's go through the teams then. Celtic line up as follows. Joe Hart in goals with Tony Ralston at right back and Greg Taylor at left back. Welsh and Scales are your central defensive partnership. You've then got O'Reilly and McGregor playing as your middle two. Maeda and Palma on the wings. Furuhashi playing probably a deeper forward role. And Ida up top as your focal point on the bench. You've got Nicholas Kuhn, Yang back from the Asian Cup, Novroshki still being kept out the side by Stephen Welsh. You've got Big O as well coming back from the Asian Cup. Awata, the lesser seen Tomoki Awata. Bernabe drops to the bench. Bernardo, who's lost his jersey. You've got Bain, backup goalie, and also Daniel Kelly retains his place on the bench. There's not a space in there for Rocco Vata. Kilmarnock lineup is Dennis, Mayo, Wright, Findlay, Excel, Armstrong, Polworth, Donnelly, Ndaba, Kennedy, Vassell, and Watkins. If we're talking head-to-heads, I think there's one that really jumps out, and that's Armstrong against Taylor, Kev.
Yeah, Armstrong I thought was very impressive. The last time we played them up at Rugby Park in the Cup game, that second half, when they as a team actually came out and showed a lot more fight and spirit and team unity than we did. He was the one that really stood out. He gave Taylor a really tough game. I think he got man of the match and he deserved it. In saying that as well, there's that second goal where Taylor somehow finds himself in the number 10 position and can't track back. So he didn't do himself any favours. I think today it's a different game because we're at home. I mean, you'd like to think we'll be, again, more on the front foot, but able to control the game a little bit more than we did last time. But in terms of that battle, it will be one to watch. And I'd like to hope that Taylor's learned a lesson and he's maybe not so gung-ho in this game and holds off a wee bit because Armstrong's a guy that can cause us problems. So we need to keep him as quiet as we possibly can.
I was reading through our very own James Mackenzie's pre-match blogs, find him at Acsom.net. He was talking about the performance of Stephen Welsh last week, an academy graduate, of course, as is Tony Ralston at right back, Kev, making his 100th appearance. And it's been quite a journey for Tony, isn't it? I mean, he's been out the plans for a long period of time. I think he took a while to win over a large section of the Celtic support. But now, obviously, through injury, he's got his jersey back. But you don't worry going into games. I've seen people saying, Ralston, Taylor, Scales and Welsh, check out that defence. Listen, it's the best defence we can field right now, isn't
it? Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, I hadn't realised this was Ralston's 100th game. So, congratulations, Tony. I'm sure you'll watch this back later on. But well done. It's a massive achievement to make. And we don't have very many academy graduates that come through and play 100 games. It doesn't matter if it's taken him 7 years or whatever it is to get there. He's hung about the club and he's deserving of those games. He's improved on leaps and bounds in the last few seasons from being that kind of joke figure that, oh no, it's Ralston in the team. We'll play anyone else at right back other than him, to now being a pretty steady and stable option there. Yeah, you don't have any concerns about him being there. He's solid defensively. He'll put in a shift going forward. He'll look to get beyond the fullback and put a cross in as well. So there's absolutely no kind of fears or worries about him being there. And then when you look at the rest of them, I was thinking this would probably be the back four. And there is that gnawing kind of doubt in the back of your mind that you go, Welsh, Scales, Taylor and all that. It's because they're no sexy names. It's because they're no Maldinis. They're not technically gifted football players in that respect. But defensively, they're all pretty solid. Mm-hmm. And right now, that's all we need. We need a solid backline that can go out and do as a job. And I would trust them to go and do it. I don't think Welsh has really let us down any time he's played. Scales has been our best centre-back for the season. And I would probably have a half-fit Greg Taylor over a fully fit Alex Bernabe at left-back any day of the week. So it's not the worst defence that we've got. And the one thing that defence has got is that hunger and fight and determination that we lacked in the game at Kilmarnock away from home, and that we've kind of commented on that we lack in midfield and going forward. We get that at the back. So it should give us a fairly solid foundation, I think, for this game.
See, when you look at it as well, Kev, I get what you mean there regarding players that come in often from the academy, coming through the ranks, and it takes a while for them to. I mean, personally, when I see a young kid coming in, you want them to do brilliantly. You do. You want to see them succeeding at the club. There's nothing better than seeing that Kieran Tierney kind of rise. But you do look at some of these players, and I guess my concern would be that. And I'm not belittling any of the guys that are starting today, but when you look at that defence, these are guys that have been there for a while. Brendan Rodgers, this season, 11 players have come in, Kev. And you look across that back line, there isn't a new player in there, So when Brendan Rodgers is looking at that squad and he's assessing the squad, he's thinking, these guys are no better than what I've got. We've brought in Bernabe a couple of years back, 18 months ago or so, no better than the boy we already had. We've brought in a number of centre-halves, Lagerbielke and Nawrocki, no better than what we've got. That's my biggest concern, because we've spent £7 million on two guys in the summer, and we've got Liam Scales playing out his skin. He was a 500 grand acquisition from Shamrock Rovers, and you've got Stephen Welsh who came through the academy. These two guys are assessed as being better than the two £7.3 million players that were brought in, and that's a concern. Because it's nothing to do with the guys starting. They're the best two players to start the game. But if we're buying guys in for that kind of lofty fee and they're not good enough to get a game, and we're in February, it's not like we're at the beginning of the season. I think that's the concern that I've got, and it's not one that I'm going to be able to shake off. You mentioned Tony Ralston there because you said, he's played 100 games in 7 years. I thought he's not been around that long. And I've just had a wee look. This is Tony Ralston's 9th season as a Celtic first-team player, Kev. 9th season, making his debut in 2015-16, albeit he made one appearance. He went on to make 2, 7, 5, 4, and 1. So in his first 6 seasons, he made one appearance, 2, 7, 5, 4, and 1. And at that point, if anybody was to say to you, Ralston's going to go on to make 100 appearances for this club, you'd have laughed him out the building. But here he is, and it's very, very deserving. And I think at the end of a campaign, when it's been a successful one, you sometimes look back on moments and unsung heroes and all that kind of stuff. And I think that moment at Easter Road, when Tony Ralston wins a 70-30 ball and we break and Kyogo wins the penalty, that could well be pivotal. And it's one of these moments that often goes under the radar, Kit.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's got a couple of them in his locker already. He's got the one at Ross County, the 97th minute winner. We don't score that, we don't win the league, pretty much. And yeah, I watched that game against Hibs, and I hadn't even clicked how that goal came about, or what was the kind of the pivotal moment that led to it. And it was only later on somebody posted it on Twitter, and I saw it, and it's Ralston's tackling, because he's got absolutely no right to win it.
No,
it's a still image, and he's nowhere near the ball. The Hibs player's pretty much on top of it, but Ralston's in there, and that's what I mean as well about having that commitment and the fight and desire. We've got that in the back line, so I don't think they're going to give much away. But yeah, it's incredible stats about the limited game time that he got in his first few seasons. It's unreal. But there you go. He's only 25 as well.
I know. It's incredible, isn't it?
Aye. You look at that and go, it's not that bad to have 100 games at a club like Celtic when you're 25. It's not that bad a record. And I think these days there's far too much pressure on young boys to have X amount of games by the time they're 19, 20, 21. At a club like Celtic, where it's really difficult to blood your young players, it's maybe by the age of 23 and 25 that we should be looking at these guys becoming more kind of regular first team players. And Ralston's doing that. And he's, he might never become the number one right back at the club, but for a number two right back, there's none better.
When Ange came into the club, Kev, he had played 20 games for Celtic, Anthony Ralston. 20 games, and he's gone on. Last season was a bit stop-start from with injuries, but he's a very good deputy at right back. My ball comes in. Are you the cancelled tickets for a women's game? Yeah, the story broke this morning. It is down to policing costs. The women's game is family-orientated fans mix. It appears that some Brist fans have been identified. I was reading this morning, Kev, and when it comes to intelligence within the police service, they label fans risk fans, and you start thinking, oh, Green Street ID, they're going to be trying to, get weapons into the ground and all this kind of stuff. Police intelligence is so, for me, it fails time and time again. You could be walking down the street back home, Kev, and you could be walking alongside someone who has been identified as having caused bother in the past. You get photographed, you get identified, you become part of a risk group, and also the police stop groups of fans going to games who look as though they're dressing in casual attire. So because you're bouncing about with a Stone Island jacket on, before you know it, you've got your details taken, you're on an intelligence system, and you're being associated with risk fans. It looks to me like an absolute excuse to pull the tickets. And as the commenter said there, it could well be down to the fact that, all right, all of a sudden there's a fan group maybe going to be coming to the game. We've not really budgeted for that. We don't want to budget for it. Let's just pull all the tickets from all the fans. And it looks to me to be a total cop-out. I'd love to see the intelligence report on what substantiated the decision to actually pull all the tickets from fans who go home and away to watch the women's team. We're constantly told, Kev, that we've got to back the women's team, and it's an up and coming game in this country. The club went professional a few seasons back. We've covered quite a few of the games on this channel. The big push last season to get everybody into Celtic Park for the two big games under Fran, and then this happens. It's like Scottish football in a nutshell, one step forward, 17 or 18 back, And as I say, I bet you the intelligence is flimsy at best.
Aye, you can absolutely believe that. It's and it is. It's like you say. It's kind of like guilty by association kind of thing. You see, you're walking along the street next to somebody, you get clipped in the same photograph, so now you're on the watch list as well. I don't know. With the women's game, it always seemed to be more of a, let's just say, a family-friendly, great day out kind of thing. I've been to a few women's games back home. I've been to a couple here. The atmosphere's always been friendly. It doesn't matter who's playing. The fans do mix a lot more. Last season, like you said, we had the ultra fan groups in at the games. We had the green wall there. Everything was built up for the great atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
Never a sign of trouble. I don't see why it's going to kick off at this game in particular. I know it's Celtic and Rangers, but come on, treat it then like it's a man's game, and up your police in detail if you have to. Pay for the cost, get more police out there if you feel like you have to do it, and make the venue safe, but get the fans in, and don't use this as any sort of an excuse. It is a cop-out to me, it feels like, because I read the report on it as well, and the first thing the Rangers fan or the Rangers wanted to do was just take the tickets off Celtic fans. So basically they've wanted to try and get a game with home support only. Then Celtic have said no, so they go, right, well, no fans then. That's a cop-out. It's an absolute cop-out. Like you say, we're trying to progress the women's game in Scotland, and something like this happens. It's the big spectacle showpiece game. You put it on, you pay for the police, you make it the show that it should be.
Yeah, 100% behind that. St Mirren, says Jean-Paul II, passed our midfield too much last week, bypassed rather, for my liking. And Joanne Douglas, Iwata built like a middleweight. All the players comment on his gym work and strength. Yeah, there's a couple of really good videos actually in Japanese. My Japanese isn't as good as our friend Liam Carrigan's, but he's getting interviewed in the gym when he's over in Japan, and you should see the arms on this guy. The upper body strength is incredible. And here we go. AGSC Tech, the women's ticket cancellation is a part of Rangers' strategy to provoke and to deliberately outrage us. Let's not fall for it. We can't allow them to disrupt and distract us. Let's ignore it. I'd love to see the intelligence report, because they've probably done a wee search on Facebook on a 16-year-old who has got a Stone Island jacket and a picture of somebody with a pyro, and they've thought, oh, wait a minute, he's come to the game. Seriously, Kev, they really do get the knickers in a twist. And also, they've got to know the differentiation between an ultra and a hooligan. They're two different things, two completely different things. And if you can't, like you say, manage that in your own stadium, then look at yourself, look at your own security, and look at your own policing, and get the fans in the stadium if you want it to be a spectacle. Kevin, we're almost at that point of kickoff. I want a prediction from you.
Oh, right. I think it will be a Celtic win. Surprise, surprise. And I'm going to go 2-0. I think we'll do it today, 2-0.
2-1. Something tells me 3-1. I think Kilmarnock will score. You know, that was the one thing against St Mirren I wasn't happy with. We're giving up too many set pieces and corners, and but for a good performance by Joe Hart and the woodwork we would have conceded last week, I reckon 3-1 this week. So let's go to the action. As always, we're going to be here at halftime. Come and join us at halftime. We'll be talking about the first 45. Thank you, every one of you, for getting involved in the chat. It's always an absolute pleasure to see who's joining us from all over the world. Is Ewan Boy Martin still on holiday? I never saw his name popping up there. If so, hope he's having a good time and working on that all year round tan, Ewan. Thanks for getting involved. And thank you to Kevin McCluskey for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.
Nice one.